special event for me. And that's because I get to do this with a partner of life. I'm Pastor Rick Pedersen, and this is my wife, Benita Pedersen.
Hi.
And today we're going to take on part 2 of personality and communication uniqueness. And we're going to really bring an emphasis on parenting and how that. So if you didn't get a chance, we're going to do a quick recap of last week, but I highly recommend that you go and look at last week's of this part 1 of personality and communication uniqueness, and that'll bring it all together. But today is going to be special in the fact of my wife has really perfected this technique in parenting. She just is amazing in that, so I want her to be able to deliver that to you. Now, just as a quick overview from last week to set this up for this week is that each of us have an innate personality profile that's really foundational into building and strengthening a relationship with another person. What we mean by that is that we need to be able to apply the effort and the knowledge and understand a person's uniqueness that they have in personality, but also communication styles. This then allows a solid foundational element to be developed for relationships. And this construction of doing this, it really forbids emotions to dictate the outcomes of relations and also the behavioral component between individuals. So it could be between husband and wife, between mother and father, between the children, between your friends. So this applies to all areas of life. Now, going back to review again, is remember those 4 distinct types of personalities: peace, fun, perfect, and control. And we went over great detail of what those went in the first part 1, so I won't go through that, but it's really just understanding each one of these. The other one is really about communication style. And what we mean by that is how a person, how they deliver, how they have a discussion, how they manage through situations. And it's really through very common terms called hard or soft delivery styles. And as I said, some people are more forceful, more direct, and others are much more softer in how they deliver their communication. But one of the ones that really, for our marriage, was when we understood this concept and really studied it of internal audio and external audio processing. I'm an extreme internal and Benita's an extreme external. And simply what that means is I do not speak until I've come through and made a final decision by analyzing all the inputs and situations, and Benita's just the opposite. She doesn't start processing until she starts speaking. And so that's what we learned, and then we'll get into understanding this was phenomenal for our marriage, but it actually was far more important to our children because they change as they mature in some of this. Now, from here, I'm going to let Benita do a lot of it, but what we want to do is just talk about how we're unique and that all these personalities bring this to us, not only in our DNA, but our spiritual gifting, our personalities from there. Why don't you expound on that?
Well, God created each one of us differently. He gave us each a DNA. He gave us each our own personalities. He's given us our giftings. And we need to see each other for what those gifts are. We talked about external, internal audio a few minutes ago, and as we're setting up, John got to see a perfect example of me being external to the point of being scared and nervous to do this, all the way to the other side of it, of coming up with a solution for it. And we need to figure that out with our kids. Many times we tend to take all kids and all people in general and throw them all in a box and say, you conform to what I have in this box or it's not going to go. And you can't do that, especially with kids. You have to learn their personalities, and their personalities come out at a very, very young age. There are babies that can tell you when they dictate your life. They know this from young on. It's part of our being. And if we don't figure that out, you're going to struggle with your kids. Mm-hmm. And we learned this the hard way. How we learn this is our oldest son is like their father. He can read something, it'll stay there in his memory bank, he can pull it out at any time, and he can just snap, and he's got what he needs. And then there's our middle son, who struggled in school because he's more of a hands-on. He learned by doing. which is more like me.
It's like Mom.
So it made it difficult,
Yes.
and we fought to get him through school until we learned to understand that they're two totally different kids. You can't treat both of them exactly the same. So we talk about this all the time about how much we love our kids. We have 3 boys. We love our boys dearly. All 3 of them, we love them all the same. But at the same time, we love them differently. And the reason why I say that is because each one is a different, uniquely different personality. They are all different in their learning styles, in their behavior styles. They're just all different in their own way, because we had one that was over here, one that was over here, and the third one just kind of fell in the middle.
And we thought that would be easy, and we found out it was actually a lot more difficult because the others were so extreme. After a while, we figured that out, and then this middle child, this third child comes along and is really across all of us into some ways in that middle part. So that was a little more difficult for that and him to be in the middle of that as the youngest, with the 2 other being dominant in their types.
And I think one of the biggest struggles we had with that is, one is we didn't know exactly how to handle that, and there wasn't anybody there to help us or teach us.
Right.
There was no one there to tell us this. So as we learned, our kids were in college, and we finally got it all figured out. And it's like, when we got to that point, we actually sat down with our boys and said, I'm sorry for this or this or this, because when our oldest son would come home with A's on his report card, we'd praise him, but at the same time, you kept it at a low key, because the next one, who had like C's, B's, C's, kind of, down in there, you're trying to get him to lift up. So it made it difficult, because the first one felt like he wasn't getting the attention, because he did all these good things and we didn't recognize him. And then you got the next one who's getting all this attention and he doesn't want it. So we had to learn this. We had to learn this. And then that kind of takes us into our parenting and how we learn from there. Our parents gave us the best tools they had. Yeah. So sometimes we look at our parents and we say, you messed up here, you did this, you did that screwed me up. It's like, no, you can't look at it that way. Because our parents do the best they can with what they have. So then if you take that and you break that down, go back to look at your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Look at the patterns throughout the generations, and you'll see where you get your information from. So each generation takes what they learned from the generation before, they take that and they try to figure out what is the best thing for me and my kids. So, but even by doing that, that still doesn't make us perfect parents. We still mess up. We still do things that are incorrect. Sometimes we go from one extreme to the other extreme. We get to a place where we don't even know what to do anymore, because everything is so different. And we have to figure things out piece by piece and as you go. And what we've learned through all this is the best way to do that is to sit down with your kids and talk to them. Yeah. Communicate with them. Yep. When they do something, kids need boundaries. Give them their boundaries. And as long as they stay within those boundaries, things will be fine. But if they go outside those boundaries, they have to know there's a consequence.
Right.
Whatever that consequence is that you set.
Yep. And that becomes, that the challenge in parenting is you have time when you're together as a family unit. And so how you communicate in that has to be different than how you're communicating to the individual child. Mm-hmm. And going back to what we just talked about before, all these different communication uniqueness, is on a one-to-one is you speak to them that way, because that's what pours into them. That's how they see that they're individually loved, they're individually safe and appreciated. When you're in a family unit, then you have to do it a little different, because you've got to encompass all of that, and you have to be able to bring each one of that uniqueness to that together in that family discussion. And then, of course, it comes to what's the difference between encouraging someone and really lifting them up and then disciplining.
Yes,
you have to understand that in the disciplining component, this follows the same model as if it's encouragement. Your tone, your delivery, your words are different, but you have to understand what they're accepting, what they're seeing, what they're feeling based on their personality types, their communication types, whether they're hard or soft score, and whether they're internal, external audio. And if, that's one of the lessons I had to learn is as internal audio, when I sat down and we were going to have a correction direction talk, I had it all laid out. And then one of our sons is very much external audio like his mother, our middle child. And he wanted to speak so he could understand. And I was like, okay, end of discussion. Yeah. We're going to go do it now. Yeah. And he didn't have that understanding. My oldest son, we were wired the same. So it became very easy from that. Middle child, we just talked about, that was really confusing for him because he had to process it out by speaking. And of course, what do you do when you're a parent and you're disciplining, you're angry, you're frustrated, is you tell them, be quiet. Don't speak. Yes, listen to me. And they can't take through that whole comprehension and then how to apply it. And all they're really asking is, I'm trying to understand so I can apply what you're teaching me, what you're directing me to do, what you're correcting me, and didn't give them a chance. So they walk away like, okay, that I don't know what to do. So those are all the other components to that. That's where Benita was really good at. And it became she was so good at communicating with children, and particularly teenagers. Hospitality is not high on my gifting, but every kid in the neighborhood would come to our house. And at first, why are they coming to our house? Some are friends, of course, of our sons, but some were not. And what come to find out is they came to see her because they could sit down and have a discussion with whatever it was, and Mama Benita would walk them through each one individually. They just felt safe. They could feel the love, but with more as they felt safe and they could explain themselves.
I think that's a key right there that you just said is kids need to feel safe. They need to feel safe and they need to feel comfortable in whatever situation they're in. And they need to experience situations as well. So you can't be a helicopter mom where you do everything for them. You have to allow them to experience. You have to allow them to do certain things. And that's where those boundaries come in. You have to make those boundaries wide enough that they can experience, but yet not so wide that they're getting themselves in trouble. Right. We're still their parents. We need to guide them. We need to teach them, because if we don't, the world will. Yeah.
And that's one of the things, going back to this, the boundary model of parenting we discovered through trial and error, because we had such three distinct personalities, three distinct individuals in our three sons. And what we found is we allow them to be themselves within what we call these boundaries. So we very clearly set the boundaries. And again, there was family boundaries that they all had to do, and then there was individual boundaries. Goes back to that. But here's the most difficult part of the boundary. When you establish the boundaries and you have consequences, as Benita said, going past the boundaries, what we had to learn to do, which was the most difficult for us as parents, is allow whatever they wanted to participate and experience within those boundaries. We couldn't give direction. We could give insight, we could help bring understanding, but we had to allow them to experience it. We had to allow them to succeed and fail, make mistakes and do something correct. And that became like the first year was like, every night we'd talk about, okay, do we say something, don't we? Is it within the boundaries? And after they understood it was safe and they could be themselves and be individuals and allow that to flow within the boundaries, they were really become much happier. And they understood that if they crossed it, we were going to be there to give the applied discipline we talked about. And after a course of less than 6 months, that really started taking hold, and they very much come in and say, look, I crossed the boundary. So they were actually telling on themselves.
And they learned a lot through the mistakes. Yeah. They learned a lot through that, which if we don't teach our kids to fail, if they don't allow failures, they're never going to be successful. Right. Because it's the failures that make us strong and teach us on how to be successful.
Exactly.
So they've had to learn that. And now, all three of our sons are in their 40s. Really outdates us. They're all in their 40s, and we have 4 beautiful granddaughters and one grandchild on the way, which we don't know what it is yet. And they are awesome fathers. They are just awesome with those girls. And as spoiled, well, you can call it spoiled if you want. They have everything. These kids have everything you can imagine. I mean, the girls even have motorcycles. Come on. And they're 6 and 9. So they're spoiled in that way, but they are very disciplined. They are very well behaved. So yeah, I'm really proud of where they are right now. They're in an awesome place. And now, did we do all that? Oh heavens, no. We screwed up so bad as parents. But as we learned, we went to them and explained what we did and why we did it that way, and what we learned from it. Because I don't care how old we get, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for learning. And if we don't reevaluate ourselves every day, we'll just stay stagnant. We won't move. We won't go anywhere. We'll stay the same where we're at. We want to keep growing. Because even, and this is going to take us into the next step, is when your kids are young, you do what you have to do to get them to where they need to be, to grow them, okay? Then you get to a certain age like us, where we're on the other end of the spectrum. Now our parents, 3 of our parents are gone, so I just have my mom left. So now your parenting skills flip. So it's almost like you're parenting your parents, but it's a different dynamic, because you still have to respect them and look at them differently than you do your kids.
And it goes to is throughout this whole process is recognizing that their uniqueness and their differences, but also the traumas that come through this, and these situations affect adulthood. And what Benita is moving into is so correct in that these experiences that we have as children ourselves, and then how that affects us as parenting, shifts, and we call it reverse parenting. We learned that the hard way, per se. There was no book. We're going to write a book on this, on reverse parenting. And that's really understanding what God's plan for us as individuals. And then when our parents get to a point where they need, they're not
guidance.
Yeah, they need guidance. It starts out as they need a little guidance and directions, a little reinsurance. And then it comes into encouragement. And then the real challenge comes in, and they're somewhat, as parents, our parents, they're set in their ways, right? We've all experienced that. And as their health deteriorates, as some of their mental capabilities and capacities start to deteriorate, we have to step in and become parents to them. So that's what we call it, reverse parenting.
Reverse parenting, yeah.
Is we've had to experience that with, her father passed away unexpectedly, so we never got to really do that. But with my parents, both of my parents, we were very deeply engaged in that. And then now with her mother, who's going to be 92, and she's now reached a point where we had to sit down and say, okay, Mom, it's time for us to take on this role. And as a parent, what we're really framing here is it's a lifelong desire, a lifelong obligation, a lifelong commitment to always parent your children. Reverse parenting is they become more of the child and we become more of the parents, and it was a real struggle. My father didn't accept that up until his last days, not at all. My mother had a little struggle with it, and really we sat down, we learned that through those 2 experiences with her mother. Rita, we got to sit down and really talk this out. And now it's to the point we are full-blown reverse parenting. She calls us, talks to us about every decision, just like as a teenage child, and even adolescent.
Well, one of the differences, though, is because she is set in her ways, and because she is still my mother, there are times when I overstep my bounds, and she has no problem putting me back in my place. So she's still parenting. Even though we're parenting her, she's still parenting me.
Right, and that's with reverse parenting is exactly a great to understand. There's times they're still going to step in as a parent and say, look, if you push this too far, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, just like parenting. And so we respect that and understand that, but it's making that it's some of those areas we talked about, we just simply had to step in and help her through that. And she fully accepted that. except for these situations. So what we're really trying to say here is this concept of unique communication, unique personality applies to all areas of our life. As husband and wife, parenting, children, our parents, the grandparents, aunts and uncles, and then more importantly for friends, because this dynamic applies to friendship, and we didn't really touch on that.
Absolutely.
And that is, again, if you take these principles and apply them, you'll have sustainable, solid relationships that won't be eroded by emotions and false behaviors, or people get into this being offended per se, that we covered in the first part. So this is really what we're trying to help everyone with. These two parts is really recommend that you watch these, take some notes, and then learn, how do I apply them myself? Because the uniqueness that comes through each one of us, we have to learn to apply that to the uniqueness of others. And it's a lifelong experience, a lifelong quest. You know, we're quest people, not journey. And it just gets better and better, as you said.
Well, tonight I think I'd like for you guys to walk away with is, especially people that rub you the wrong way sometimes, I would really encourage you to pay attention to what people say and then look at their background.
And how they say it.
And how they say it, and look at that. Because usually when people lash out in anger or lash out in get frustrated, there's usually something behind that. So learning personalities, learning people's uniqueness, accepting people's uniqueness, and the biggest thing is stop comparing ourselves to each other.
Yes.
We are unique in our own way. All your kids are unique in their own way. Stop comparing. There's nothing to compare to. God only made one of us.
And one of the main success principles or keys to understanding unique personality and communication is to understand yourself.
Yes.
You need to understand who you are, how God created you, and then fall in love with that. Accept that. And yes, we have rough edges. I mean, if you've been around me long enough, you know about
we both have rough edges.
My control issues, and I've had to learn to have them really rounded off. But I'm still a control person, personality-wise, and very much that. And I've had to learn to adapt, but more importantly, accept that's how I'm wired, because of my calling, gifting, and anointing in the Jesus covenant. I was designed this way. I was given this unique identity, this unique personality, these unique talents to do what I do. The same thing with Benita. And so that's learn to accept and love yourself. Then you can accept, love others with their uniqueness.
Yes, uniqueness is a key. And you have to also look at, as you can see, we both have hard scores.
Yeah.
Good or bad, I don't know, but we both do. And sometimes people, when we speak, it's with confidence. And some people that don't really know who they are, or they struggle with the uniqueness of themselves, take that as being, they take offense to what we say. It's our internal processing and how we process things, and that's another whole topic. But we have to look at people and try not to be offended. If you get offended by something, maybe think about yourself and just ask yourself questions like, why did that offend me?
Okay.
Why does that bother me so much?
Yes.
Because I can tell you that you will find something deeper within you that's driving it.
Yes. Good.
So uniqueness is a key for a lot of things.
Yep.
And just take people for who they are in the uniqueness that they have. And because that's how God wanted us to be.
Right. And so it's a way wanted to end this series on supernatural relationships. And remember this. Allow yourself to be your unique way by understanding what others are and their unique communications and personality. And then we become unified and not uniformity, because the body of Christ is not to be uniformity. It is to become an influence to society by the diversity of the uniqueness that each of us carries in unity. And that's all this whole series was about, is to help bring that to heart. We hope it was beneficial. We loved and doing it. And I get to sit and have this conversation with my beautiful wife, who's so amazing, who has such knowledge, and get her in front of the camera was a unique opportunity. God bless. Have a great rest of life.
Bye.
Bye-bye.